What's up, guys? So, if you haven't looked into this kid yet, please do so. Um, his story is really off. Like, the cops, yeah, they're bad in this town. Like, they have no clue what they're talking about. Like, they did an awful job on this case. There's so many unanswered questions that don't make no sense whatsoever. And it's hard to even talk about this case because YouTube doesn't like you to talk about this type of stuff. So you got to skip a lot of words. But so I'm gonna let you guys, if you want to pause and read, you can. Uh, because I'm gonna read it to you guys, but I'm not the best reader in the world. So if you want me to read it to you, just wait a second. If you want to read it to yourself, just pause and read. So here we go. It says under the blanket. Ramona said she went to see him. She wanted to see him, and they made way for her to enter the room. He was lying on the gurney. She knelt beside him on his left side and just grabbed his feet and kissed them. They were so clean and perfect. She knew this would be the last time she would see him. His feet were clean and perfect. He walked outside barefooted in the dirt of the yard. How can his feet be clean and perfect? Okay, anyways, it's off subject, sorry. Uh she knew this would be the last time she would see him. The sorrow and grief was indescribable, but Ramon's mind was working overtime. What happened? She needed to look. She was alone in the room with some sort of female uh, chaplain, and everything was covered up to his neck with a blanket. She went over to his face and took a look. He was a lot, whatever that word is, and peaceful, and his face was unharmed. There was no swelling anywhere. His teeth were all intact. He had clearly been intubed as the tube was still in. Intubated as the tube was still in, whatever that means. He had a neck collar on, and his eyes were half open, clear green, not swollen. There was no redness or damage that she could see. She opened his eyelids and saw that his pupils were blown, and in the moment realized that his soul had left his body. The pain was unbearable. She kissed his forehead, pushed his hair up, and just wanted to smell him one last time. He smelt musty. His right hand suddenly popped out from beneath the blanket, and she leaned over and put it back. She went back to the left and grabbed that hand and held it one last time. She put his left hand into her own and noticed blood in between the fourth and fifth finger. She thought to herself, "Good, there is evidence." Something told her to get her phone out and take some pictures. Later, she would notice that these pictures clearly show the marks on his wrist from being bound by the belt, even though the ME reported that by the time she received the body, there was no marks. Ramon stood up and left his arm to take a picture, and she suddenly froze. She stared at it and the picture for a second longer, then let out a scream. "Something is wrong. My son is wearing my husband's dress shirt. OMG, did somebody put him in these clothes? Is someone in the house?" The female chaplain ran out to get help. The investigator was in the hall speaking to the physician. Ramon called James' cell and told her that Scene was dressed in Jared's clothes and that someone could still be in the house. Now Ramon's brain was racing. What was happening? Why was Scene wearing his dad's clothing? Suddenly, she saw a replay of Jean's body being hit by AED, hit by AD in the black underwear, and her stomach felt easy. That wasn't Sean's underwear. That was Jarrett's. The investigator came in the room to ask what was going on. Once she explained, the investigator asked Ramon to leave the room since it was now considered a crime scene. Ramon didn't realize that from that point on she would never be able to hold or touch him again. The entire family was robbed of saying their goodbyes, and the door closed. As Ramon saw were flashes from the investigator's camera, she stood there with tears coming down her face. Scene was taken away from her. Ramona was directed into the empty room, and soon after that, the door opened and Jarrett entered. They both began to sob uncontrollably and pray to God to take care of Sean. Ramona took Jarrett back to the room just to be close to their son. No entrance back into the room was allowed. While waiting outside, a kind nurse came up to her and gave her a small test tube that contained an EKG strip, a sample of his last heartbeat on this earth. They both cried. Damn, that almost made me cry. Ramona begged for one last look at Sean, but the investigator said no, they were moving him. As the tears poured from her face, that's bullshit. She should have been allowed to look at her son one more last time. These cops are pricks. Like, I don't like these cops already that are in this case. As the tears poured from her face and soaked her uniform, she begged and pleaded. He agreed one last look. Okay, so they actually did give. A stretcher was wheeled out, and they lifted the blanket for a few seconds so that they could see his face. His blonde hair popped out. She started to cry, and they wheeled him away. Damn. These cops weren't even going to look into it at all till the mother said something. Like, it was already considered the kid did it until the mother said something.